I don't know, I'm not feeling it. Well, so what do I want to tell people? It'd be like, hi, long time no see. Leave a comment down below what I should have told you. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a hot minute since I've posted. A lot has been going on and I feel like maybe I want to film a separate video about that. Let's see. I need to figure a few things out. But in the meantime, before this flower fades, I would really like to show you this plant. This is a Cattleya maxima, coerulea. And I received this plant in a haul from Orchids & More around 4 years ago. Back then was a tiny little plant and was shown in a super cringy video. So I hope today's video is less cringy, but I feel like with all these comments, it's getting harder and harder by the second. So yeah, I've had this plant, as I said, now for around 4 years. And it came with a mention that it should be blooming size in around 3. Actually, they were not lying about that. As you might know, if you've been around the channel for a bit, I like to keep my plants outside on the balcony in the late spring, summer, early fall months, and then move them indoors again when temperatures at night get a little too chilly. And this plant was kind of working on flowers at that point. Unfortunately, moving indoors was a bit too much of a shock, and then the buds were dropped. There were actually several. So I was like, oh yeah, whatever, let's see next year. But then the next growth that matured, this one here, took a little rest, and then suddenly buds were coming out of this one as well. And you can see, I don't know if this is really easily, if I can show this really easily, but there were several, there were a total of 3 buds that formed, but only one ended up developing into a flower, which, first bloom. And yeah, I'm really happy with this plant. It's, I think root-wise, it's in a really nice shape. And also flower-wise, it's the first bloom. This looks really good. Shape, I think, could be a little nicer if it wasn't so floppy. If this a sepal, I guess. If the sepal was standing more up, I guess the shape could be a little better, but first bloom, maybe next time this might be better. But yeah, fragrance-wise, I'm really pleased as well. I've had some Cattleya maxima that were not fragrant at all. I have a teapot that has a really nice kind of spicy rose fragrance. And this one is different. This is more of a very soft lilac, I would say. Very, very pleasant. But I think really the interesting part about this plant is the color form. It's not the normal kind of pinkish purple teapot color. It's also not the rubra. Not sure if I would call it a rubra, but it's a very escura. It's a more intense reddish pink, or like reddish purple, I guess, color. It's another Cattleya maxima I have, but no, this one is the coerulea color form, which has a more bluish hue. It's a very elegant, cool-toned flower that I really enjoy. I really also enjoy the slight striation in the petals. And of course the lip is marvelous with this cool-toned purple against the warm orangey yellow. Has a really nice contrast while still being, a bit more subdued than a really punchy rubra would be. So color-wise, I'm really thrilled. I think it's a bit difficult to capture this on film, but I'm trying to take a few pictures, to see how we can capture it appropriately. I've been looking into kind of the determinants of the coerulea color form, and it's a bit difficult to find actual research information about it. I think over the centuries of Cattleya breeding, people realized that there are distinct mutations that lead to the coerulea color form. So that means if, for example, you cross this Cattleya maxima coerulea with Cattleya walkeriana coerulea, you might not end up with a coerulea offspring, which might be a bit confusing if you think about it, because the coerulea cauliform is typically known as a recessive trait. And normally you'd think, okay, if a plant shows the recessive trait, that means it's homozygous for that trait, which means all the offspring, if you cross two coerulea plants, should also be coerulea. I feel like this is getting a bit complicated now. So let's maybe take a step back, right? So if you think about Mendelian genetics, you think about a diploid genome. So that means there are two copies of every gene, right? And genes can be dominant or recessive. And dominant means even if you have only one copy of the gene, that trait will be expressed and shown phenotypically. However, if you have a recessive trait, that trait cannot manifest in the phenotype unless every copy of the gene corresponds to the recessive trait. Now things get a little more complicated with this coerulea cauliform, because if this trait can be caused by two distinct mutations in the genome and only one of them is enough to result in the coerulea cauliform, you can imagine a scenario where you cross two coerulea plants, but they have the mutation in different genes. So then, in the end, in the offspring generation, the two mutations can complement each other and then lead to the typo cauliform again. Normally you'd say it rescued the phenotype, even though rescue is not the word I would use here, because the coerulea cauliforms are really sought after. It's considered one of the rarer cauliforms for most plants, and apparently it's even rarer than just the alba, kind of the albino white flower color. So I find that extremely interesting, and I'm really curious to learn more about the molecular genetics of the coerulea cauliform. I've been looking around and I can't really find too much proper scientific literature about it. One thing I could find is a claim that was not really backed up by any reference or any citation, that the coerulea cauliform is caused by a pH change in the tissue of the plant. And to be honest, I find that a bit hard to believe, because if you change the pH in the tissues, it would affect everything in the plant's metabolism. Life is extremely sensitive to minute changes in kind of the internal pH. So yeah, I don't know. If anyone has some pointers, please leave them in the comments, because to me, I guess the anthocyanins that generate the flower color are typically more located towards the vacuole. So I guess you could say maybe it's a pH change only in the vacuole. But still, I feel like that sounds extremely severe. But we would definitely explain why coerulea cauliforms are typically known to be a little more finicky and a little harder to grow. I always thought that's more kind of the inbreeding depression, because, you know, as a recessive trait, if you want to generate more offspring, you typically backcross the plant, thereby limiting the genetic viability of the offspring, which makes them more susceptible to diseases. I mean, think of the Habsburg dynasty, or, you know, even the last Russian Tsar with the hemophilia, right? So these are recessive traits that can have really detrimental effects on the fitness of an individual that kind of accumulate over generations of inbreeding. Problematic. In the end, I'm really happy with this plant, how it developed, how it held up under my care, and I hope you agree. So thanks a lot for stopping by, and I'll talk to you hopefully sooner than last time. Bye! Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I want to do a very quick video on this plant. This is Cattleya maxima, but the coerulea cauliform, and sorry, I have some tea here as well.